making movies is hard.
Making movies is hard.
Welcome. This is the podcast about the struggle of being an independent filmmaker. I'm Alrik and Liz, the founding host of the podcast, and I'm a sci-fi horror filmmaker. And my first feature film, The Alternate, which is being featured online right now by CineQuest as one of their CineJoy Spotlights events. It's happening this Thursday, November 11th at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. So I think you can watch it right now. But if you want to watch it with me and the crew, and I don't think it's a crew, it's me and the cast. If you want to watch it with us, that's happening 5:30 p.m. And then the Q&A is at 7:45. So if you just want to be there for the Q&A, you can comment that time too. Anyways, check it out.
I'm Liz Manischel. I'm a writer, director, producer who has made 2 features, currently in development on about 5 more. I'm a distribution consultant who used to manage Sundance's creative distribution initiative.
This week, we welcome the Film Festival Alliance to talk about what the Film Festival Alliance is, how it got started, and how they partner with film festivals and basically what they do. I was not aware of them as a group at all. And then I looked at their website and I saw all the film festivals that are part of this alliance, and I was like blown away. A lot of them I played this year. Well, not a lot, 2, but still, it's pretty cool. So looking through that list, I saw a ton of awesome festivals a part of this, including Heartland International, which I just played, Woodstock, which Liz loves and I didn't get into, shaking my fist. And of course, some big cats like Sundance and South by Southwest, but also hundreds of other film festivals, big and small. So a lot of people are part of this thing. We also talk about a news article from the Hollywood Reporter out of this year's virtual AFM about the streaming wars and how COVID will put indie film models to the test. But before we get into all of that, Liz, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I have watched the cut of my short film twice now. And I have to say, after the first cut, I was very uncomfortable and unhappy. And I talked to Sean about it. And Sean was like, "You're supposed to vomit after watching the first cut. You're never supposed to be happy." And I was like, okay, well, I'm right on track then. And then, time has passed and I'm letting go of a few things and am appreciating a lot of the work of the amazing crew. So I'm doing well, but I think I'm also in that weird gray space of we talked about this a few weeks ago, where you reconcile the magic of the onset experience with the footage, and somehow you cannot see the footage objectively. You're just seeing all the things you didn't get, and it makes you feel bad. So that's where I'm at right now. How are you?
Wait, I'm curious. Does Sean watch the cut with you, or does he not watch it?
He would. I didn't give it to him because he's an actor in it, so I refuse to let the actor see it, even though he's my husband. It's kind of like The Monitor. I never let an actor look at the monitor. I would never let Sean look at the monitor either.
That's funny. Yeah, I think that keeps it pretty straightforward in some ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm doing good. I guess the real thing is, I'm getting ready to go to Italy in 2 days, which is
for your film
really
festival.
For the film. Yeah, for the Ravenna Nightmare Film Festival, where filmmakers like David Lynch have played their films, and David Cronenberg, and a lot of other really fancy people, including, I can't remember his name right now, but the director of Society, which we both love, has had a film play there. So it's oh my God, I'm in the best company in the world, going to this film festival. I'm so it's so cool. But yeah, I can't wait to get there. It's going to be quite a long trip, but it's going to be really fun. I'm there for a weekend. But yeah, I'm really jazzed. And I'm also sad to be away from my daughter, but it'll be fine. She just got her mom. She's got her grandma. She'll be good.
It's good. Distance is good sometimes, right? You can't always be with your kid.
Yeah, and I'm also planning to use the flight time to write, because it's going to be I don't know, 10 to 12 hours in the air or something like that. Okay. So that's a lot of time where I can be on my computer, chipping away, writing away.
I remember flying by myself without my son. It was a few months ago or maybe a year ago. And I remember just being this is so easy. I was just swoop, put my bag away, swoop, sit down, relax, have a drink. It was the most unbelievably relaxing experience compared to what it's like when you're with a kid in a plane.
Yeah. Yeah, the mask thing's not so much fun. It's not fun to wear a mask while you're flying. But besides that, it's not so bad. Oh, the film, The Alternate, we got into our 20 film festivals. We did it. We cracked the code. Yeah. Super awesome. Tampa Bay Underground Film Festival in December. And then Shock Fest is another one. And then the Studio City Film Festival out in Los Angeles. Although they're not giving me an in-person screening because I'm not from LA. They're we're only giving LA filmmakers in person. Everyone else gets virtual. And I'm I could drive. I'll be there. Because they don't want people to fly. They're like, we don't want, international, like travel with COVID and everything. It's very, very smart of them. Very good for the world of them to do it that way. But it bones me out of another in-person screening. But that's okay. But no, the movie's, I don't know. It's like, what can you even say anymore? It's doing too good. We want a couple more awards. It's like, I don't know. I never expected
this is going real well.
I never expected it to be like this. I was like, wait, 4 or 5 awards that we've won now? Like 20 film festivals? Like, is this what happens? This isn't not my, this is not the normal for me. So it's a little
Well, it is now. And also I think...
Oh, well, thank you, Liz.
It is now. I also... Though it's like the feature world is a little bit different than the shorts world, like we've talked about. Like I really do think that shorts, you're competing against just like an insane amount of content. And when you get to the features world, it's still an insane amount of content, but there's just a little bit, just a teensy bit more opportunity, right? And so I think that's also what you're experiencing is that change from the shorts to the feature world.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what my next film is, if I make a short or if I make a feature. I was only been thinking about features, basically like taking the Liz advice from the old Liz. I was just like, features are the only thing that matters. And then I was talking to my friend the other day, and I was like, oh man, that would be a really cool short film idea. But it's like, do you really want to spend 2 years making a short film that you can't sell, whereas you could spend like 5 years making a feature that you could sell?
Why not do both?
At the same time? Whoa. Yes. I love it. But anyways, I think we should talk about one thing that people have been loving us through lately, Patreon. Thanks to everyone who's jumped on Patreon and supported us over the last few weeks. It's over at www.patreon.com/MMIH podcast. Our lovely producer, Eric, has put some work into it to make it look a little nicer, to kind of update things a little bit better from when I did it by myself in a panic, 3 years ago. So thanks to Eric for that. And there's much more exciting things coming. If I didn't have a movie to go and promote every weekend, it would be happening faster. But we don't want to say anything right now, right, Liz? We want to keep it a secret for now.
We're going to keep it a secret, but just a recognition that this show is made through the sacrifices and hard work of 3 individuals, the 3 of us, and that every single dollar that goes into the Patreon goes towards the making of the show, and that we are grateful for anything that you can support us with.
Yeah, so if you've been thinking about it and you haven't done it yet, $1, no big deal. It's easy. And it would make the world of difference to us. So thanks in advance. And another thing that you should do if you have time is to check out the International Screenwriters Association, also known as the ISA. They are an organization designed to connect writers with filmmakers through a number of programs they offer, including publishing your logline to a network of industry professionals, consultation services, contests, and their top 25 writers lists featuring some of their best writers in their network. So head over to www.networkisa.org to sign up for free today. And if you want to bump up to like the fancy pantsy ISA Connect member service, you can do that. Oh, with a discount. It's only $80 if you use our promo code MMIH2021, where it normally is $100 a year. And this is valid through November 30th. So you only have like 30 more days? Actually, at this point, probably like 20 more days.
3 weeks.
Yeah, 3 weeks. So go check that out. And without any further delay, here is our chat with the Film Festival Alliance.
We're here with the Film Festival Alliance. Can each of you please introduce yourself and your title?
My name is Leela Meadow-Connor. I am the Executive Director of Film Festival Alliance.
My name is Barbara Twist, and I am the Associate Director of Film Festival Alliance.
And I am Gray Rodriguez, and I am the Communications Director for Film Festival Alliance.
Jumping right in, could someone define for us what this amazing, massive institution is? What is the Film Festival Alliance?
Film Festival Alliance is a nonprofit, a national organization, actually semi-international. We have members in Canada and some in the UK as well. And we are an organization that exists to serve film festivals and the people who run them. The majority of our work is creating professional development and networking opportunities for people who work in this industry, as well as creating transparent channels of communication with filmmakers and other stakeholders in our industry.
And how did it all come together? Like, how was the Film Festival Alliance formed in its, originally?
FFA was born out of a project of IFP I should know this, I want to say it was about 11 years ago. We missed celebrating our 10th anniversary during the pandemic. We totally forgot about it. But it was formed as a project, actually sort of informally at IFP or the Gotham, when a bunch of people, programmers would come together every fall, and that was the one touch point that they had with one another, was to communicate about festivals and talk about what was going on in their worlds. Because so much of what all of us do is so siloed. And many people don't have other film festivals in their immediate community. And after a few years, it became a project of the Gotham. And then we joined forces with the Art House Convergence, which is an annual gathering of art house cinemas that took place every January in Utah, right before Sundance. So we co-programmed a film festival track with them for many, many years, as many film festivals also run cinemas and vice versa. There was a lot of crossover. And now, I guess for about 8 years, we've been our own standalone nonprofit organization.
Now, I feel like, go on, please.
I was going to jump in and just say that's actually where Leela and I first met. I previously was with Art House Convergence and was the managing director of that. We're a program of the Michigan Theater Foundation for a long time. And so when I worked there, Leela and I started collaborating on programming in the film festival track. So then after I left Art House, Leela approached me at TIFF, actually the last TIFF that I went to before the pandemic, and we were having some drinks, and she was like, "Hey, would you ever thinking about working with FFA?" And I was like, absolutely. And so, then we got together, and, 2020 was a wild ride. And so we got to bring Gray on to the team. And so actually just really in a year ago this month, we went from being 2 extremely part-time people to being 3 reasonably part-time people.
So a lot of the people who listen to our show are emerging filmmakers. I mean, filmmakers of all levels, but I would say that there's a lot of emerging filmmakers. And I would say that it might blow their mind to know that there is a Film Festival Alliance. It might blow their mind to know that there's an Art House Convergence. I think there's a whole amazing side to the industry that filmmakers may not be fully aware of. And I hope this doesn't reflect your marketing. I mean, you guys are great marketers and it's a great organization, but I think there's kind of a willing ignorance sometimes to think that it's just you make your movie, you submit it, and you see what happens. I mean, are there other organizations out there like FFA and Art House Convergence that filmmakers need to be made aware of? And how does it serve a filmmaker to be conscious of all of these amazing programs that you guys are doing?
Absolutely. I think for me, in terms of other organizations, I think it is important for folks to acknowledge that just like in their own work, where they're going to have working groups, friend groups, collaborators, and hopefully a larger organization. I think for filmmakers, that could look like the Gotham, that could look like Film Independent, Women in Film, the Transgender Film Center. There's a number of different organizations that bring together filmmakers that similarly, of course, though, there are going to be organizations that bring together the other professionals in the industry. Some others that I always love to shout out that, again, you wouldn't necessarily think. There's the League of Historic American Theaters. So that is an organization that brings together people who operate historic theaters, some of whom are movie theaters. So that overlaps with, we have members in Film Festival Alliance who are members of LHA, but it also includes the Nederlander Foundation and the big Broadway theaters. So that's really fun. There's a fun organization called AMIA, the Association of Moving Image Archivists, and they bring together archivists from all over the country and archives that, again, are not just preserving the work of filmmakers, but are preserving the work of journalists, newscasters, sports, your local, PBS channel, public access radio, all kinds of things like that. And so just remembering that, for all the work that filmmakers are creating, there is an equal amount of people working to exhibit that, curate audiences for that, and most importantly, preserve that work. We make so many films every year, and we think that we have this, incredible access. And in some ways, I suppose you could say there's greater access to film today than there was 50 years ago. On the other hand, when you really dig into it and look at barriers to access, credit cards, internet, streaming, lack of physical video, there's maybe not so much. And so just remember that there are a lot of other people in the field who are, may not have the word filmmaker in their name, but are contributing an equal amount to our larger film culture. And for me, I think the importance of knowing this, especially with the exhibition community, is knowing that when you make your film, you might have an idea of who you think the audience is, or you might say like, oh, I want it to premiere at this festival or something like that. But to know that there, again, on the other side is a whole group of people who day in, day out are building audiences, are doing the good and important work of educating audiences, of connecting with individual humans and engaging with them about what they like to see, and then getting them to get their butt in a seat to show up for your movie. So that's what I love.
Filmmakers should know that I would say a good majority of the people who work at and or run film festivals are filmmakers as well, and got into this field like accidentally. For a lot of us who are like in leadership positions now, we didn't go to school to become film festival executive directors or leaders. We went to film school, and some path that we took led us to the independent exhibition side of things. So I think there is a great deal of sympathy and empathy from festival folks towards filmmakers, and a lot of them are doing both at the same time, like Barbara and I and many others.
So I'm curious, what's the best way for filmmakers to participate in this, like to kind of work with exhibitionists and figure out where their films belong? Is it simply, submitting to film festivals like we all do, or is there other ways that filmmakers could collaborate with, people on the exhibition side?
Yes. What you just said reminds me of something that Emily Best, who runs Seed and Spark, always says about film festival strategy, that there is the ideal film festival strategy, and that is a thoughtful, curated approach where you look at every festival and you look to see what they actually program year over year, and you see how your film fits into that to make that decision. And then there's the typical way, which is spray and pray, which I just think is such a funny, all props to Emily. I'm not sure where she heard that or came up with. I mean, it's just brilliant because it is. That's the typical approach, right? You, in your mind, you have festivals that you have an image of premiering at. Oh, that place would be cool. And I think that that's a great place to start. There's nothing wrong with starting there, building a list of all the festivals that you think you want to apply to, and then ask yourself why you want to apply to those festivals. And that will give you some insight into what you want to do with your film. I always figure there's two questions, right? At the heart of it, the most important question is what do you want to do with your film? Where do you want it to go? But that can sometimes be difficult for people to, I think, attack, especially if they maybe don't have as much experience with many films playing different places, or maybe it's a lot of times it could be a short film where financial recoupment is not the singular aim. So then it kind of becomes, well, what is the point of, I think I want people to see it, but I also kind of want to feel cool and show it off. And so by starting with a list of festivals that you think would be fun, then you can ask yourself, why do I want to premiere at Sundance? Well, I want to premiere at Sundance because I want to go somewhere in the winter. Okay, well, there you go. That opens up a whole bunch of other winter festivals like Aspen Shorts, for example, that you could, or Denver Film Festival that you could apply to. Maybe you want to premiere at South by Southwest because you want to see a bunch of cool concerts and hang out in a cool city. And South by is really cool. Great. You can apply to Cucaloris, right? Which does a lot of music events and is in Wilmington and is the most I haven't been to the festival itself, but I have been to their compound. And let me tell you, you want to apply to Cucaloris. Maybe it's you want to apply to a festival that is really going to connect you with other filmmakers. And so that, again, is a great way you can start looking at, well, where are cities where there's a good community of filmmakers? You got to do your research. New Orleans, Chicago, Seattle. You start in Nashville, Memphis. You start kind of building these other places where you can achieve the goals that you have for your film, and then look for the festival that's in that place. The other strategy that I'll take is starting with the film itself. What is the film about? Where is it set? Where was it shot? Then you expand to the people, the key talent that are involved. Where are they from? Where do they live? Where do they have connections? Where do they have family? What's the subject material of the film? What's the length? And through all of those, that can give you a good picture of the types of festivals that would be likely to show your film. And then lastly, I think it very much is part of a producer's job. And I mean the producer who is not the director. I mean, no matter how big or small the film is, like have a producer who is not the director involved, someone who can handle the business side, the festival side, the distribution side, and allow the director to focus on the creative side of things. But having, a producer think about your distribution and outreach strategy is just as critical as the locations and actually shooting the film, because you can make a film and then it can sit on your hard drive for a really long time. It's embarrassing how many hard drives I have. And I have plenty of films that I've worked on that never really went anywhere. And so I think it's really important that from production, you're thinking about, the next stage. Where is this film going to go once we're actually finished?
Jumping in a little bit about evaluating film festivals, is there like a definitive rubric or something that evaluates them that's not Film Freeway Gold status or like Oscar qualifying? Like how do you trust and vet film festivals? Is that also one of the services of the Alliance?
We don't vet them. I mean, we do. People go online and they apply to be a member. We do actually a small vetting process. Just make sure that, they are not one of those award mill festivals, and that you can go to a website and pretty much tell, I think, whether a festival is ethical and you've heard about them. And Film Freeway is not the end all be all for finding out about those festivals. As you know, those top rated festivals are oftentimes the festivals that make you pay for a seat at the table. And that's just not the way the festival world works.
How do you evaluate whether a festival is really a market or a destination for distributors and sales agents outside of like South by, Sundance, TIFF? I mean, there's like a handful of 5, but there must also be some sort of database of where distributors and sales agents like to go to. And I guess that's part of my question too, is like, how do you know whether you should invest the time and energy in a film festival?
That is such a great question and such a great database. I love that idea. I can't say that I personally know of that. I think that it's one of the challenges of the film industry where there is certain information that seems to be, it if you know it, and if you don't know it, you don't know it. I think the challenge is for a single organization to kind of go through this like accreditation vetting process. And so it does end up falling on, again, the producer to do the research. And on the one hand, it's helpful if you're a producer who wants to make multiple movies, because then every time you do research, it's additive. On the other hand, you have tons of producers and tons of filmmakers, every year kind of rehashing the same data and the same research. So I think it would be great, it'd be brilliant if there was a database of some sort. And we would certainly be happy to contribute in terms of corralling our members. But I do wonder if there's an opportunity maybe for like a self-reporting database that, festivals themselves could, share important information. Like, do they offer jury cash awards? We already kind of know what their submission fees and things are like that. But maybe there is something that could be created, because it does fall. It's a lot of additional labor that falls on the filmmakers. But on the marketing and press, I am going to ask Gray a question, which is that I have always wondered this as a filmmaker, like when you get into a festival, what's Gray, with your experience, what's kind of the expectation on the festival versus the expectation of the filmmaker in terms of generating press for their film when they come to a festival?
Yeah, that's a great question. And just for some background, I also act as the director of marketing for the Tallgrass Film Festival in Wichita, Kansas. And I've seen it happen a couple of different ways. Of course, we get press kits and we build all of our own branding and material as the festival to promote the films, and also do some work that was mentioned earlier of building the audience in the community or connecting with community partners that are relevant to the films, which I think helps a lot to obviously get butts and seats, but probably provides a more meaningful experience for the filmmaker as well, to have some community ties connected to their subject. But as far as press goes, at least in my experience, we've done some junkets and certainly invite media to attend events. But there is a group, or there's a type of filmmaker, I guess, that I appreciate that also reaches out and asks for the press list or asks for the contacts and really does that work. Most of the time it is a producer to also do that kind of research and advocate for themselves, because it is oftentimes a small team working at festivals. So it's nice when you hear that a producer is already connected with local media or they're doing some outreach as well, because it really feels like more of a partnership between the two, which I think creates valuable relationships long term. So it's kind of a both, I guess, that everyone's kind of working towards that press, because it's good for everyone when there's an audience there. So
I just wanted to weigh in because I think it's funny because I always felt like I was doing something illegal when I reached out to the film festival to ask them for the press list. I was like, I wonder if they'll give me the press list. Like, I never really realized that it was encouraged by the film.
Well, I think I'm speaking for myself, so I hope I'm not like upsetting other marketing people by saying that. But I do think at least it shows initiative, and also like, again, your film better than the marketing person probably does. So while I can certainly reach out, it's really great when filmmakers are doing that as well, I think.
And do you reach out to on behalf of every film, or do you have to pick and choose because you just don't have all that kind of time?
I think it depends on your team, like what kind of bench you have. Like if it's a one-person marketing team, it is a little harder to do it for every film. But I do think that's where your programming team comes in and can kind of pare it down for you. Like these films would tie really great with these organizations. And yeah, I mean, most of the time it is, you hope to be able to do that for every film or every shorts block. You want someone at every showing, of course. So I think that it's important to play fair, for lack of better terms.
I was just at Heartland International last month. It was really great. It was an awesome experience. They had a community marketing person who they just hired for this year, and they had done a really great job of trying to get community groups out to certain screenings. And I was thinking, okay, I have a sci-fi thriller. What community group is going to be interested in that? But then I just hearing you talk, it's oh, I should have researched if they have a Comic-Con or if they have some sort of horror convention that they do in Indianapolis, and then reached out to that group. And then, try to give that information to the film festival to say, hey, can we coordinate something here? And then the question is if a filmmaker did that, would you welcome that? Or would you be oh, that's too much. Why are they doing this?
Yeah. I mean, again, I don't know why you wouldn't welcome more people coming to your festival. So absolutely, I think that's an excellent strategy that benefits everyone. And that's kind of back to, I think, Barbara's point too about that's the value of doing research on the festivals you're submitting to, because you can look at that kind of stuff ahead of time as well and kind of already start planning. How are you going to, okay, you're accepted, what's next for you and how are you really going to connect with that community? So no, I think that, again, in my personal opinion, that's a really great idea. And, there's probably opportunities too, if you can connect with the festival ahead of time and introduce them to those partners that you found, to do some discounts for those groups and really help fill the theater from tackling a whole different area of that town or city. So.
And back to Barbara's point about having someone on your team who's specifically in charge of the festival, not just the submissions and all that, but some of the most successful films that I've seen come through festivals have an impact producer or somebody who's really engaged with the screenings themselves and can reach out to the local organizations, especially when they have some sort of social impact connection. But when there's somebody that can do that work on behalf of the film, it's mutually beneficial to everyone.
I wanted to congratulate y'all on the Film Festival Sustainability Survey that y'all did with Dear Producer, which was astounding, and I'm obsessed with it. And I just can you talk a little bit about what that was? Because I'm not doing a great job of explaining what it is and what the goals of it were, and just talk about it. It was wonderful.
Yeah, we are so happy to have it out in the world. It was a survey and a report that I was particularly excited about, especially to bridge my work as a filmmaker and my work in exhibition, and also my deep feelings about wage labor and paying people for, not just their value, but their labor. And yeah, it goes deep. And so it was exciting to be able to talk with people about it. It was born out of a number of things. Part of it was inspired by the Dear Producer report that came out last year that Rebecca put together, which was shocking in all the wrong ways, negative,
basically
shocking.
Said that producers were making less than $28,000 per year. I mean,
exactly.
Insane.
Yeah. And then the other part of it was that anecdotally, Leela and I were hearing that festivals were paying filmmakers in 2020. And then another kind of angle is I was on the board for several years of the Ann Arbor Film Festival. And they recently adopted last year a policy of paying filmmakers that was born out of work of a filmmaker festival person who out of Canada that was really pushing to pay experimental filmmakers. And for them, it was kind of it was closer to artists, and that's more traditional to pay artists through like a lot of grants, like the Warhol grant, and NEA really pushes for individual artist payment. And so for experimental filmmakers, it's like they're often in museums and things like that where paying artists is the norm. So then moving over into the festival world. So we kind of, I was getting hit, in 3 different directions about filmmaker sustainability. And so we wanted to take it on at FFA and start recording it just to get a baseline. And so that's really what this year was. We had about 70 plus festivals give us a much more robust financial picture. And of that, we found that folks were in fact paying filmmakers. The ways that they're paying filmmakers really varies depending on budget size, operating budget of the festival. Some things that I found interesting were that the festivals were more likely to pay screening fees than revenue sharing. Revenue sharing would be where you would pay a percentage of the box office generated for that particular film. Screening fees would be a flat amount that's either negotiated individually with the filmmaker or kind of just set across the board. Some thoughts that I had around that is that revenue sharing can be challenging because box office reporting for festivals can be really different, right? When you go to a cinema, you buy a ticket. You pay for the ticket. A percentage of that ticket gets paid back to the distributor. It's fairly simple. You might have different ticket amounts, but it's pretty simple. With a festival, you've got badges, you've got comps, you've got sponsor comps. And how's that different from volunteer comp? And if someone's got a badge and sees 6 films and someone else has a badge and sees 2 films, how do you kind of break up all of that? So I think that partly lends us to screening fees, but also I personally like kind of the flatness of a screening fee, that it's very consistent and it's transparent and it's the same for everyone, which can be nice. The other thing that I noticed was that larger festivals with budgets over $1 million, the majority of money they reported giving back to filmmakers was in the form of cash awards, which is super cool. Also, cash awards are juried, which means they're subjective, and they're also going to a smaller group of people. So you have an opportunity there where, it comes down to some basic questions and values I think that your festival has, right? Do you want to make a monumental impact in several filmmakers' lives? Or do you want to spread the money kind of across multiple people, and maybe it's not that much money, but it's sort of a general consistency and fairness across everyone? And I don't think that either way is better than the other. It's just a different approach of redistributing the wealth that your organization is generating from the work of these filmmakers. So as long as you're paying filmmakers, that's kind of my baseline. It also, I think, is a great way for filmmakers. We will expand on this survey and reporting going forward. And we really encourage filmmakers to visit our website, which is filmfestivalalliance.org, and read some of our other reports. We did some annual reports. We'll be doing some salary surveying, some staff end of year financial reports as well, for filmmakers to understand all the expense that goes into a festival. Because I do think it's important. Like we reported 41% of the box office revenue generated went back to filmmakers. And that's kind of a fun number to bandy about and to see, festivals really are, giving back to filmmakers. On the other hand, there are very real expenses, and there's a lot of other work that festivals do year round. So I think it's important for everyone to understand, all the labor that goes into it, because fair is very relative. And at the end of the day, the majority of us working in this space, whether that's independent film or independent exhibition, we're not dealing with large amounts of money. So it can make it even more challenging to be fair, because you're like, oh, but I'm already not getting paid enough and now I have to pay someone else. And, so just coming back, I think, to a larger values-based conversation, which is that I want to live in a world where independent filmmakers can make movies and be sustainable and people, independent festivals can run. And maybe we don't all live in mansions, but you know what? We can all pay our bills and see our families and friends and watch movies together. And that's kind of my larger vision that this survey is somehow going to lead to. So you can check back on that.
I think it's just the survey was additionally important because it's just nothing like that out exists, right? It's like, I think a lot of filmmakers are not aware that a lot of film festival employees are being underpaid or paid very little. Again, this is a great unifying gesture to remind people that we're all in it together. I'm really drawn to the rev share model because it is like a theatrical run. I mean, it's like, what really are the differences between a theatrical and film festival? And that's not a question. It's just it's just throwing that into the conversation. As leaders in the Film Festival Alliance, as filmmakers, maybe you can answer individually, what are you trying to push film festivals to do? Like, what do each of you have a specific goal you're trying to encourage the aggregate film festival community to take on?
Just to speak quickly as not a filmmaker, but as just someone who's worked in festivals.
Great, I've just decided you're a filmmaker.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
I say one day because, I feel like Leila and Barbara will convince me one day. That's just what I think. But I will say, just from a festival organizer and someone who's worked for almost 10 years in film festivals, it's for me about equity and all these conversations about, equity and fairness in pay and really work-life balance for the festival worker. And I think that kind of can carry over for the filmmaker as well. Like, just really examining like what's important, how we're treating our staff, fairly paying people is something that I've noticed just as I see people burn out or leave the industry or leave the festival part of the industry because they're tired, and they're really people who could do a lot of good but leave. So that's what my thought. I'll pass it to a filmmaker now.
I would echo that. I think it's compounding, like both what Barbara said about there just not being a lot of money in our independent sphere altogether, coupled with what Grace said about, this equitable pay and transparency. I'd just like to see more transparency between filmmakers and festivals, and more transparency just about like the whole process, about the process, so that we understand what each other are dealing with. We understand, the work that goes into a film festival, and that your submission fees aren't going to make a festival rich. They're probably literally going to keep the lights on. And so I really think that if our sector of this industry is going to survive, we really just have to be communicative and collaborative.
Yeah, everything that Gray and Leila said, I think for me, it comes down to transparency, and that's being open about data. Luckily, the majority of film festivals are nonprofit, so you can look up their 9 days, including the big ones, Sundance Institute, it's a nonprofit, so I think like being transparent about our financial data, as is reasonable, and then also about our roles and what everyone does, because I think that we exist in an ecosystem where a filmmaker is on the same level as a programmer, who's on the same level as an archivist, who's on the same level as a film critic, and so forth. In a perfect world, everyone helps support everyone else, and we all contribute to a more vital and brilliant film culture.
So I want to hear more about the day-to-day work that you do with festivals. Like how, you have all these festivals that are part of the FFA, but what are you doing with them to help them improve? Are you like coming up with like standardized like processes that they can adapt if they want to? What are some of the things that you are doing with all your festivals in order for them to improve?
Yeah, I'll start with that by touching on like sort of what we did pre-pandemic, which was really focused on bringing people together in person around different festivals. We have these regional roundtables where we come together to talk about best practices. Fast forward to 2020, spring of 2020, and it was just the middle of March, maybe like the second week of March. And it was a Friday afternoon, and we started hearing all this stuff about COVID. And, a lot of us were planning to go to South by, and we just decided we were going to call like sort of an industry-wide, Zoom. And we've been using Zoom for years at FFA because our members are all across the country. Our board members are all across the country. So it wasn't necessarily a new thing for us at the time. And we invited everyone. We were like, this is a conversation that's bigger than just our 250 members. Anyone who's involved in this part of the industry is welcome to join us for this conversation. Half of the people were like, I'm still going to South by. The other half of the people were like, oh no, I'm canceling right now. Literally, we got, and the call ended, and an hour later, South by canceled. And so every week from March until September, every Friday afternoon, we held a call that was open to everyone in our industry. And we had like Cleveland Film Festival was one of the first ones to go virtual. So they came on and talked about like how they did it. We did case studies and we did drive-in conversations and we did audience engagement conversations. And we talked to some filmmakers and we talked to some exhibitors and distributors and like cinemas. And it was really great. And sometimes the conversations were really robust. And sometimes it was just literally people wanting a safe space to come and like be with other folks who are going through the exact same thing. The work that we did during the pandemic shifted kind of like everybody else's did, but a lot of it was really just connecting people and allowing them to come together at the same time, at the same place to talk about issues that we were all facing in the moment. So instead of a in-person conference this January, obviously we didn't do that. We did a virtual conference called FilmX. And it was attended by over 800 people, which was really incredible. And one of the wonderful things about doing things virtually is that there's more access for more people. So when you host a conference in a pricey resort in Utah right before Sundance, pretty much only the executive director or leadership of an organization is going to be able to come. But we were seeing people, down to like the manager level and below and seasonal workers and volunteers who were able to participate in these conversations that tend to be really limited to like the upper echelon of leadership. So it was really wonderful to be able to hear other voices and bring other voices to the table. And that's kind of the work that we've been doing this year has been mostly virtual. We're really looking forward to next year. We can start to convene again. We're going to do FilmX again virtually in January, but then we'll plan 3 regionals where we'll meet up in person at our member festivals throughout the year, because I think we're all really hungry for it and ready for it. And as you said, like going to Heartland, wasn't it great to like be back at a film festival and have that connective experience and watch a movie in theater and have a Q&A and meet other filmmakers? Like there's really nothing like it. I think we got so far away from that just in 18 months that like, it was so hard to remember what that experience was like, that now we're having them again. And it makes you realize why film festivals are so important. So day to day, we're programming for FilmX. We engage with our members, and I'll let Barbara and Grace speak to sort of what they're doing day to day as well. But a lot of us sort of thinking big picture about, what does 2022 look like? What does our programming look like? What is our through lines? Who's going to be on our board? Kind of the sort of stuff that most nonprofit executive directors do in terms of like stewardship of the organization. And a lot of times we'll have members reach out and say like, hey, I'd love to talk to you about this. And Barbara and I joke that, during 2020, we had a lot of like therapy sessions with a lot of our members. And I think it's just like for them, just having a half an hour or an hour with us to talk about what they were doing and sort of hear, because we talk to so many people, to hear what other people are doing and to like know that like they weren't alone was one of the most important things. And I do think that the work of best practices and networking and sharing of ideas is still there, but it's really been cemented post-pandemic.
Leela, you nailed it.
Yeah, she's a pro.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're still in the process of undertaking a strategic plan process this year that will lead into next. And so that has been, all of these things that we've been doing have been very informative for that as we look to shape, like the next 5 years of FFA. There's sort of a natural, obviously the pandemic became this sort of natural marker, barrier, boundary of things that I think have changed. We always talk about, the industry is always changing. It's changed fundamentally. And I don't know, I mean, it's sort of, but also like, here we are 120 years later, like still watching movies in movie theaters. Like, come on, it's not that different. But I think what has changed is, some of the ways in which we're engaging with people. The concept of virtual cinema as part of a festival, is new and here and isn't going anywhere. And we're excited to work with our festivals to see the ways in which that will become part of their regular festivals going forward. There's been a lot of extremely overdue conversations regarding accessibility, physical accessibility for people, whether that's in an actual space. So often you hear festivals or organizations say like, oh, we're ADA accessible. And like, that's the bare minimum. Like, that's not something to champion. You're ADA accessible because that's the law. You literally couldn't be open unless you were that. So we are, working, we're not there yet. And we certainly have not, it's not like all of our panels and events have been extremely accessible up until now. So I don't want to overstate, that we somehow have done great things, but we are also processing that and working through that to make sure that going forward, all of our events do adhere to guidelines around accessibility and things like that. And I think it's opened up a lot of opportunities for that type of thing. And lastly, I'd say it's sort of reimagined our relationship with filmmakers. And we've been able to get closer with filmmakers during the pandemic because of the ease of making Zoom meetings and things like that. And that's always very helpful because we're here to serve the needs of film festivals and provide spaces for them to come together. But often we hear about potential problems or challenges to the festival industry from filmmakers. And then it's through hearing what their experience is that we can bring some new ideas and some new conversations to, the festivals in our, at FilmX and things like that.
I think in lieu of our final 5 questions, Alrik, I have an alternate plan. Do you mind
Sure.
if I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to
Sure, just do it.
reroute us. Alrik asked a question earlier that I just want to press again. And maybe it could be like the way we cap off this conversation, which is like, short form. What are the top 3 things filmmakers can do to better work with film festivals? And I would just love to hear if each of you had a perspective on this that you wanted to share. I'd love to hear each of you answer this.
I can give one kind of in the same vein as what I talked about before, but coming from a festival perspective is just the value of that research, like I said, and really like showing you've examined who the audience is and are being intentional about your submission goes a long way. Just reading what the festival is looking for, but also going beyond and researching, I would say means a lot to the team on the ground at that festival because I don't know, it just shows an extra step of care. So for me, that research is really important and helps build that relationship for sure.
That's amazing. We could also do one per person to get a total of 3.
That's what I was thinking because there were 3 of us. I was like, maybe she'll get it. Yeah, thank you.
I think it would be great. And this goes for both sides of it, and kind of goes back to my transparency point. But I think if there was sort of a better understanding of what it takes to put on a film festival and all the roles that go into a film festival and vice versa, like same for the film. I think if we could really have that sort of breakdown and be like, here's what the film festival is doing. Here's how much things cost. Here's what we're doing with your submission fees. Like here's literally how that's helping us turn the projector on. I think that really understanding, because now we're going into this era and some of the work that we're doing at the FFA that I didn't mention earlier is a strategic plan about looking at the future of film festivals. And what are we? Are we, Barbara mentioned the hybrid. Yes, that's probably here for a long time or maybe forever. So what is the future? And we have to really come together as neither could exist without the other. Filmmakers could not exist. Independent filmmakers need the festival circuit, and festivals need the independent filmmakers more than ever, especially with distributors, going straight to streaming. And I think that's one advantage that film festivals have over cinemas is that we have that direct relationship with the filmmakers, whereas, the cinemas are relying on the distributors. And I think that if we can solidify those relationships, and hopefully the FFA can do some of that work as well, we can really keep this, our part of the industry sustainable.
Okay, I have 2 because no one has ever accused me of being brief. So the first is make sure your film is finished. And by that, I mean, if it's a short film, like personally, I would not send a work in progress. I would just wait until my short film is finished. There are different rules if you're doing a feature and you're submitting to Sundance and you have a previous relationship, all that kind of stuff. But for the most part, like submit your finished film because, it's just you're competing against a lot of other people. So you want to put your best foot forward. And also in that same vein, is your film really the length that it needs to be? And the best way to find out about that is to screen it multiple times for multiple different groups of people before you finish the film. That's what big studios do. They show the film in Dallas and in Burbank and, make sure that, you don't necessarily have to do test scores, but, even if it's a 2-minute short, show it to a couple different people, get their take on it, get their feelings, like dig deep, ask them real questions about links. It's also great practice for you to better understand your own film. And then the last thing I'll say is Also, it's important to know your rights as a filmmaker. You have the right to not be treated poorly by a festival. You have the right to clear communication from a festival around your submission. If you've paid a submission fee, you have the right to know whether or not your film has been accepted, kind of where things are in the process. You have the right to ask for a screening fee. They might say no, but I often hear that, folks either don't realize they can ask for one, or if they're maybe afraid to. If your film has been accepted and you ask for one and the festival comes back and says, no, and we're taking your film out of the festival, that's not a great festival. That is a terrible, I'll go on record. That's a terrible festival, and email me immediately who it is. And I'm happy to get on the horn and tell them my 2 cents. I just think it's important for festival or for filmmakers to know that you shouldn't feel like you're at the whim of the festival. Of course, there's a mutual respect, and there is, as Leila said, it's important for you to understand and to empathize, with the work that the festival is doing, and that, often they are receiving hundreds, if not thousands of submissions, and that is a lengthy process. So, that maybe there's a delay in the response or things like that. But, we do also hear through the grapevine experiences of filmmakers where they've had to pay for things that pay for an award, or, maybe aren't getting a great experience. And, just know that you also deserve to be treated like a human being. So, again, you're always welcome to hit us up. We're not a policing body. It's not like we can necessarily take care of something, but if you do have a poor experience at a festival, or if there is a larger concern that you see in the festival industry, we do want to know that, because that's something that, is helpful for us to know, and to, maybe it's something we're not seeing that we could address on a larger level.
And I do want to just slightly jump onto what Barbara said. If you go to the Film Festival Alliance website and you look at our members, they're all slightly vetted. Like Barbara said, we are not a policing body, but we do feel that we do the research to find out as best we can that they're ethical festivals, meaning they're treating filmmakers right, they're treating audiences right, they're treating their communities right. So that's a really good place, I think, to start. And you've probably been at, played at, or applied to many of these festivals. They're really wonderful. And for the majority, community-based festivals. One more thing I wanted to say, I'm sort of swerving into Gray's lane here a little bit, but from a marketing standpoint, it's really helpful if you have a feature, if you have a trailer. It really helps sell the film. And it really helps if you have labeled photos. And
I was just going to say that. Yeah.
Copy that you can copy and paste easily from your website. If it's not in Film Freeway, you have your short synopsis, you have your long synopsis. It really saves so much time for the film festival.
Yes, I can't stress that enough. A beautiful still goes a long way. And I think that's a very technical thing. I didn't know if it was too technical to bring up. So I'm glad you did, Leila. And as someone who just came off a festival, I appreciate a filmmaker who has a labeled file and a still that's not a poster, that's not got text on it. It's just a really nice, high quality still. So pro tip, that along with everything that Leila mentioned is huge for the team.
What I did because I'm in the middle of my run right now, is I made a folder of 10 different stills, poster, EPK, final files, everything. It's all on Google Drive. And whenever I get into a festival, I just send them that. And I say, here's all the art. Here's all the EPK. Here's all the raw trailer. Here's the final movie. If you need a different version, let me know. And then that's kind of how I start the conversation. And it seems to have been going pretty well. And then it makes it easy for me because I don't have to hunt and peck so much each time I get into one.
Yeah, that sounds really nice. And I'm sure you make all the Instagram carousels because people are like, that one has a still. So yes.
Yeah. I always wonder if there should be a common app. I know there's Film Freeway, but funny enough, festivals don't actually have they don't get the trailer, the stills, et cetera, that you upload to Film Freeway necessarily. So you find yourself duplicating a lot of that work. So I love the way that you have that as just a Google Drive folder. So much easier. The last thing I'll say is caption your film. It's not about can't afford. If you did not budget for a proper caption and audio description, go to rev.com. It will give you captions that are just, dialogue and a little bit of audio description. The great thing is you can edit it yourself. It's really easy to do. And it's a great way to learn about the important work that audio description folks do. Do it. It costs $1 a minute. So if you made a short You can't tell me you don't have that money. Email me and I'll pay for it. It is, if you send captions, festivals are starting to require captions more and more. But if we as filmmakers start putting captions in our budgets and start prioritizing that, that's really critical for folks who maybe are hard of hearing. I have a hearing loss. If people, maybe if the film is in English and English isn't their first language, captions are helpful. You're going to if you end up sending it, to a festival in a country where the language of the film is not the language of the country, you're going to need them. So it's so easy to do that at this point, you can't not do it. So just prioritize that budget for it. And, more people will be grateful. More people will be able to watch your film. I mean, because when you think about it, people who are deaf straight up can't watch your film if they don't have captions. So you just completely excluded a group of people, often for what is a very small amount of money.
That's amazing advice. And I know that we have to cap up this conversation. So we just want to thank you for being a part of our show and for talking about the Film Festival Alliance.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Liz, we did not talk to them yet, so this is probably pointless, but what do you expect them to say? What are you thinking this is going to be about?
Well, okay, this is funny because I know what I'm going to ask them. I don't know. I think that anyone who's listening, because we're probably going to talk about this in the interview, anyone who's listening should go over to dearproducer.com and read the Film Festival Sustainability Survey that Dear Producer and the Film Festival Alliance put together and published, I believe it was this week. And it is the most amazing, report on how film festivals survive this day and age and the compensation they give to filmmakers. And so I would say, hopefully everyone's reading it while they listen.
And is it not that they're making tons of money off of all the submission fees and their fat cats living it up in the high life? That's not the result.
I mean, the takeaway is that a lot of them are struggling, of course.
Yeah.
But
I feel like filmmakers have that idea of film festivals that they just think that they're just charging these big fees and they're just making money off of small filmmakers and, they don't even give anything back, blah, blah, blah. It's it's just a money making game. And it sounds like that's not the case with the Film Festival Alliance film festivals.
No, but you'll also be surprised because I think a lot of filmmakers are afraid of asking for screening fees and the like, and you'd be surprised that there are more than you suspect that are giving out screening fees in spite of all of them struggling. And then there's also some interesting data with regard to diversity and the makeup of the staff and the compensation of the staff itself. But I just encourage people to support Dear Producer and the survey that they put out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So Liz, you've got a news article for us this week. What is the deal with this article from Hollywood Reporter?
Right. So we have an article and it's called AFM 2021 Streaming Wars. COVID will put indie film models to the test. And it breaks down about, AFM, which is going on this week, what the predictions are with regard to how indie film will survive. And I just will say right now that I am allergic to all of these hot take articles with people trying to anticipate what's going to happen in the world of film distribution. And I also, if I'm going to go on a rant, which I seem to be, I also don't like them calling indie film lower budget, but still high prestige titles could be safer bets for international buyers. Among them are the biopic Lee, starring Kate Winslet and Marion Cotillard from Rocket Science, CAA, and UTA. It's no, this is not you don't even use the word lower budget. Even if you mean lower than 500 million, don't use the word lower budget in reference to a Marion Cotillard and Kate Winslet film. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox. I just was frustrated with this article and I just think they don't know anything. They don't know anything, and they're just kind of spewing out theories about whether theatrical is going to save us or not.
Yeah, it's really interesting, this whole thing about, indie film, what's indie film, and what people are calling indie film are these big budget movies, backed by humongous agencies, know, and I had a conversation with some friends a while ago, and you were talking about filmmakers and, films, and they kept on just naming Martin Scorsese and Clint Eastwood, and I was yeah, but what about unknown smaller name filmmakers? And then one of them was but why do we care about them? And I was I guess that's true. If you're not a famous person, like why do people even want to talk about these filmmakers who, are making these other movies? Like, why does it matter? Like, who even cares about movies that are smaller than this biopic Lee or whatever, like the movies that we're making, And I feel like people do care because people watch them, and we hear about them, like people watching them, and like you see the reviews, you see people discussing them, you see people like I was in Indianapolis for the Heartland International Film Festival, and I was like talking to a guy, and one of my Uber drivers or Lyft drivers, and he was like, yeah, like I just watch everything. Like I just watch everything I can. Like I have all the streaming services. I have all the platforms. If it's got 4K, I'll watch it. So even if it's like doesn't have a great rating, I'll watch it if it's in 4K. And it's like that guy is the guy who's watching our stuff, who's just like going through, like looking at posters and be like, oh, that looks cool. I haven't seen that. Let me watch it. And those people exist in the world. It's just, but you're not their average person who isn't a movie nut.
I still think that these articles and these press pieces and everyone who's not in the industry makes a lot of presumptions about indie content, and they feel very disconnected to me. Like even this article said, it referenced a bunch of films, and they said a decade ago, this sort of lower budget indie fare would likely have gone directly to Netflix. And it's like, yeah, if we're lucky, like you're like you're acting as if Netflix is the bottom of the barrel. A lot of us would be so lucky to get on Netflix even a decade ago. So this idea of like completely disregarding our type of filmmakers, the filmmakers that you and I are, and the type of filmmakers that we generally communicate with, I don't even believe that your Uber driver would watch our movies. I just think that we're like in a class way sorry, Alrik, to loop you in with my negative Nancy thinking. But I'll say this for myself. I just think I'm in a class way below what Hollywood Reporter would ever talk about. And so I just hate this speculation and this kind of like grab all terminology when it's based on just like box office mojo. It's based off of data that is only connected to high profile films. So anyway, whatever. I'm just frustrated. And my favorite moment in this article is they talk about finding the right marketing hook for the right territory. And someone said, in reference to the movie Another Round, which everyone apparently loves, which is about day drinking, as someone said, I bought it as soon as I heard the pitch. I know a movie about drinking would work for Russia. It's like, what a weird statement. It's like, we know nothing about audiences. We're just taking cultural stereotypes and they're like, oh, Russians, they like to drink. I think they'll like this movie about day drinking. And then they pitch it out. But there's no real true data that's putting forth why people acquire the content that they do. It seems to be like a blind instinct based off of racism.
Yeah. I'd agree with that statement. I talked to a distributor recently who was like, yeah, your leads, they're not white people. So this might be a hard sell internationally. And I was like, really?
Like, why? Why do they say that?
Is that true? Because I don't really think that's necessarily true. There's people of all different colors all over the world. Like, it really is the content that matters. And it's like how you market it and what the movie is actually about. And it's either going to resonate with people or it's not, and like, I'm just hoping that when my movie gets out into the world that it resonates with people and then it spreads along and it gets seen. Like, that's what you should be focused on. It's just making a movie that resonates with you, that you hope resonates with other people, and not like getting, Ryan Felipe to star in it because someone tells you that Ryan Felipe is the person who should star in your movie. And it's like, no offense to Ryan Felipe, whatever. Movies can star more people than just like, a handful that have been deemed like sellable by like, international sales reps or whatever. Because the truth is, just like any other part of this business, no one knows anything. No one knows.
No one knows. I also think that what actually propels projects forwards is nepotism, is what I think propels projects forward. And that's, so. And then I think that these projections that industry experts share are just them grasping at straws and saying something that's quotable because they know that the press is going to pick them up. I don't think there's any real truth to it. 100% agree. You should just make the content that calls at you, that itches at you. But ultimately, the labs, the fellowships, representation festivals is all to help you get on that elevator to the nepotism helping you. It's the elevator to nepotism, the nepotism cuddle party, as I like to call it. And so it's just a long game to get on that elevator.
Here's my question, and I think you kind of just answered it, but like, do you think it's more important to play that game to get on that elevator than it is to just make movies that you care about? Like, what's more important?
Well, I mean, it depends on whether you're trying to make money at this. So if you're trying to make money at this, yeah, I do think it's more important to play the game and to, I'm trying to speak as vaguely as possible. So I was on Twitter today, and I don't want to call this person out, but I will say that someone who's a very well-known indie film celebrity posted a review of their film and then acted as if it was a positive review. Something like, thank you so much to IndieWire or whatever it was, or like they liked it or something like that. I go into the review, I look at it, and it is not a positive review. And if you look at the comments that this person received, you could tell no one has read this review and they're just taking his word for it. They're just using very shallow thinking. So what I'm saying is I honestly think success in this industry is just acting like you're successful, acting entitled, and using your relationship and kind of like scrubbing your way through project by project and leveraging those to a real career. That's not an artist. That's not an artist.
Well, okay. I have a couple things to say about that. First, I have gotten reviews for The Alternate, and I've been posting all of them. Luckily, they've all been positive so far, or mostly positive. But I'm wondering, what am I going to do when I get the negative review? And
just don't post it.
But I think I should, because I think that's only what is honest as a filmmaker. It's I post all these reviews. Oh, look how great I am. How beautiful I am. But then I don't post the one that's a little bit more challenging, a little more tough on me. I feel like that makes me look like a schmo, like an idiot.
I post negative reviews. I do it too. I think it's funny. I post people saying no thank you on Letterboxd to my movies, literally are no, and I think it's hilarious. But then think about what you're putting forth into the universe. Every time you do that, you're saying I accept this evaluation of my work, and it doesn't attract momentum the way confidence does. And I think that I'm just saying I don't think I'm ever going to reach that echelon because I don't know how to act that way. And I really like that you would post negative reviews, but it's not going to help you. It's not going to help your career.
But you think that what this unnamed person did, the thing that was wrong was that they pretended it was a good review and posted it anyways.
They knew that people were not going to read the review because they know that people are lazy, and they just kind of amplified their own career and steamrolled ahead as if it didn't matter, which is amazing. But here's
my devil's advocate, because if IndieWire posted a review of my movie, I'd probably do the same thing. I'd be like, wow, we got a review by IndieWire. Check it out, And
but
probably just say that.
Are you going to say they loved it?
No, I wouldn't say it. But you could look at that as just being some sort of a very self-deprecating comment, he's taking the piss out of himself or herself.
Maybe. I hope so. But it just, that moment made me think the real way to navigate successfully, if you want to be successful, not about if you want to be a good person or if you want to be a good artist, but if you want to be successful is to just kind of steamroll, act like you're the shit. Yeah, to just put forth an aura of success around
that person
you.
Was probably thinking we said, I said, they love it. It's really hilarious. Everyone's going to comment and say oh, yeah, right. Oh, so sorry to hear that or whatever. And then they can have it. I don't know. Who knows? But I mean, I just love that. I don't love, but it's just funny how you see it as this person's a piece of shit.
I think they're a douche. I'll give you one more example, and I swear, I think, but someone else on Facebook that I'm friends with posted a fabricated press piece.
Oh.
As if it was about him and the upcoming release of his first film. And it was very obviously fabricated. But there were 50 plus comments that were congratulations, dude. Great job. I knew you had it in you. No one could tell. It's about media literacy. And it's about the people who are taking advantage of lack of media literacy.
That person is legitimately a jerk for making up an article and then posting it. I can't get behind.
Sure,
but yeah, I mean, I feel if you're just promoting yourself and you're using the whatever the review that's negative as a piece of promotion and just being honest about it or trying to make a joke out of it, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
I guess we don't know if this person was making a joke out of it, and that's very true.
Right.
I think the core of it is not what actually happened. The core of it is how I interpreted it. And I was just thinking
right.
the people that we're surrounded by that are successful, don't seem to let they don't seem to sweat at what people think of them. They just kind of like go forward.
Yeah, I also feel like the real successful people, like it's either they're really good at social media and they're always on it and they're like always promoting themselves, or they don't care at all.
Oh yeah, they're not on social media and they like have this aura of mystery instead. Yeah.
They're just not a part of it. Like they don't even have an account, or if they do have an account, they never post, you know? And it's just like, I feel like I'm somewhere in the middle. Like I have an account, I definitely post, but I'm not like, you know, a regular Twitter or a regular Instagrammer or whatever, but I just, you know, get my work out there through it, because I feel like that's like one of the currencies that you get from going to a film festival is like you get the currency of promotion. What I'm excited about is like when the movie comes out, like now I have 20 different accounts to blast the movie out on when the movie comes out, you know, because like every time that I've, you know, gone to a film festival and the short film is available online, they always retweet it, they always share it. And so I feel like that's what I'm really excited about, is like trying to use that as part of the promotion for when the movie is out in the world. But yeah, I don't know. It's so interesting. I mean, I just don't think that waiting for the elevator seat is like, it's just a fallacy, man. Like
you're not waiting for it. You're hustling to get on the elevator.
Right. But I feel like so many people will like, they won't make movies, right? Like they don't go out and make their own thing because they're chasing the $10 million budget, the $5 million budget, the $1 million budget. They're chasing the star attachments. They're chasing the perfect script. They're chasing all these things. And like, you know, there's only so many seats on the elevator. There's only so many places, and trying to get there before you've even done anything of note really is like, does that really work? I mean, obviously it works for some people, but it's like, I don't know. I feel like it depends.
It depends on what your reputation is and like whether you have Sundance associated with you or AFI or whatever it is.
But if you're just a starting out person, it's like, why would you take all this time to try to like, you know, get into one of these artist programs or get into one of these things, and then years and years of those applications, years and years of writing grants, and then like maybe you get to make your movie like 5 to 10 years later. It's like, I don't know. Like I like the idea of just doing it on your own, making the thing, even if it takes 5 to 10 years to do it, but at least you'd have made it, you know, and not just like gone through all this series of rejection and, you know, like trying to get these people's attention and trying to get into this upper echelon, but just never making it. And I feel like I see a lot of people in my network do that because that's all they know to do. They don't know how to do it the other way, where they raise money and make their movie, or they don't want to. I don't know. That's what I think is really interesting, is like, what's the right way?
Well, I hear what you're saying, but I also think, look, it's too late for me to do those programs. I actually have aged out, so to speak, so I can't do them because I've done 2 features. And if there's another program that I'm not aware of, like, let me know. I want to do it. I want to do these development programs. But what I'm noticing is my goal this year was to level up. So I attached myself to a bunch of features, and I realized, because it's so hard to get one project off the ground, because you have to kind of manufacture a level of momentum that is like almost inhuman. It's like alien, like you have to create it out of nothing, that it's impossible to do that for more than one project at the same time. And that you're going to kill yourself if you stretch yourself thin and create that momentum on too many projects. And I'm learning that the hard way right now, where I was like, okay, I'm going to gamble and I'm going to attach myself to more projects to see what hits. And then it's like, that's not going to work because I'm only passively attached to 5 projects, right? But it's all about, like you were saying, it's about throwing your weight behind the one that you believe in the most and getting that off the ground. And then, yes, you can play the game and have representation and work within certain genres and try to see what else you could get cooking. But it's also about commitment. And I think, if you're just applying to these programs because you want to be chosen, you're not really committed to the art form. And if you're attaching to these films without really doing anything about it, you're not really committed. It's just kind of surface. So ultimately, I don't know. I didn't make a mistake the past year, but now I'm like, what do I do now? Like, how do I manufacture this?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'd much rather be in your position, like 2 features under my belt and, you know, a couple shorts and with all these attachments, than to be like somebody who's spent the last, 5 years or so just trying to get something made and not making it because they didn't get to that high level they wanted. They didn't get, Hugh Jackman to be in their movie.
But if they do get something, they will be, if there is like a compare and despair of the situation, they will be higher than me right? It's like they'll win big if they do get into that program or if they get that attachment. So it may be worth it.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if it's worth it because I don't even know. Like, I wouldn't like. Are you like saying that like filmmakers like us who just go out and make their own movies that they can't make that jump? You know, because
I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. Honestly, I'm like talking, thinking like maybe I'll figure it out at the end of the sentence, and I don't. So I just keep on talking.
Well, I feel like there's these filmmakers, we haven't had them on the show, but they made this movie. Okay, well, so the Fear Street person, for example, like her first film was like an indie feature, and then she got some directing jobs, and then she got Fear Street. And it's just like that's sort of like the way that I
So it was
like,
TV directing, right?
Yeah, TV directing.
So like that, how hard is it to get into TV directing?
Yes, so hard.
So hard. So what helped her get into TV directing?
Yeah, well, the feature, you'd think, you know. But
I don't know.
Is there a correlation between the TV directing and Fear Street, or is the correlation between the feature and Fear Street? Like, who knows, right?
It's probably the TV. It's probably like she established herself as a valuable commodity, as a someone who did multiple TV directing jobs, entrenched in the system, trustworthy, with representation who vetted her and vouched for her. And then maybe they look at the samples. But I think that the core of it is what systemic opportunities have you worked within? And how can people trust you? And that's why I think it's really hard to get from where we are to like $5-10 million projects.
Right. Yeah. I think it's all like everyone says, it's all the connections, you know, it's all the people that you meet in your career. I think some of it's nepotism, but some of it's like, you know, the rich person you meet at a film festival, you know, or the producer who watches your movie randomly somehow and loves it. You know, it's like, I think these are like the random small things that help get you to where you're going. I talked to legend of the show, Timothy Playing, yesterday, and he talked about, you know, talking to a filmmaker who had gotten like a really big job writing at Pixar. And he asked, and I was like, so, you know, was it useful talking to him about that? And he's like, no, it wasn't. Because what he said was, I submitted a script to a script competition. Somebody at Pixar read it from the script competition, and then they hired me. And so it's like a completely random, like not replicable situation. And I feel like most situations are like that. Yeah. Like I spent a long time trying to figure out like how to replicate situations and how to like, okay, what is the pathway to get where to I want to go? And then you realize there is none. It doesn't exist.
There's no pathway, but okay, what if I were to say to you, just like you were fundraising, when you were fundraising, you wrote down like every single person you ever knew who had money, and you went, like you said that on a show, right? That like, right. That's the way to fundraise for you when you're trying to figure out how to put together a small project or medium-sized project or whatever. What if I said to you, you do the same thing, but for your career? You write down every single person you could ask to shadow on a TV show. You write down every single person that could help get your film viewed by a certain distributor or sales agent. Like, I just think a lot of people don't view their career in that way. And that's what I'm saying is hustling to get to the nepotism stage is like actually putting together your resources and think, well, what's the next step for me? Not just what's the next movie I'm going to make.
Right. Like, how am I going to make it with the best package possible or something? Yeah. I don't know. Tricky stuff. This was way better than what I wanted to talk about. So... Yeah, this is good stuff. I don't know what this is called, but this was just conversations about, trying to make it in the indie film world, or make it from what is actually the indie film world to what, you know, the Hollywood Reporter considers the indie film world.
That's right. That's exactly the perfect summary of what that was. That's like my dream in life is to be what Hollywood Reporter thinks is an indie filmmaker.
Right, exactly.
Well, for those of you who are still with us, you can always send us a question, comment, or suggestion to podcast@makingmoviesishard.com. You can leave us a review on iTunes if you like the show. You could check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at MMIH Podcast, YouTube at Making Movies is Hard Podcast. Thanks to the Film Festival Alliance for coming on the show. Thanks to our new editor, Jeff Vrymut, for doing the editing. Thanks to all of you for listening, and talk to y'all next week.
I don't know. Do I have anything else interesting to say? Not really. I guess, the alternate.
Beep, beep, boop, bop, beep, bop.